Hello, good evening students. This is Dr. Anil Mahajan. Today we are going to talk about a very important topic in medicine, which is a neuromedicine topic, the CSF, about the cerebrospinal fluid, its production and its pathway. And before doing this topic in neuroanatomy and neurophysiology and neuromedicine, we need to know about the classification of the nervous system, how the nervous system has been classified. So, friends, nervous system has been classified into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And central nervous system we categorize into the very important brain and spinal cord. And the peripheral nervous system again categorized into somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. And from the autonomic nervous system, from the previous concepts in class 11 and 12, we know it is parasympathetic, and sympathetic nervous system. About the functions we will study in physiology, but here we need to know about the anatomy. Parasympathetic nervous system, also known as craniosacral outflow. And sympathetic nervous system, it's also known as thoracolumbar outflow. And one more thing in nervous system we need to know, which is about the spinal nerves here. Students, we have total 31 pairs of spinal nerves. How many? 31 pairs of spinal nerve. So nervous system has been categorized into central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system again has been categorized into brain and the spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, it is somatic and autonomic. The autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic. Sympathetic also known as craniosacral, parasympathetic also known as craniosacral, and sympathetic also known as thoracolumbar. So from this classification, now we need to know about the brain. Brain has also been classified into three parts, which is first Rhombencephalon, also known as forebrain. It is the largest part of the brain. This forebrain also divided into telencephalon and diencephalon. So brain, first part is prosencephalon, second part is mesencephalon, which is also known as our midbrain. And third part of the brain is rhombencephalon, also known as hindbrain. Rhombencephalon or the hindbrain, again it is being categorized, and it's categorized into metencephalon and myelencephalon. And in metencephalon, we include pons and cerebellum. And myelencephalon, the part is medulla. Which part comes under myelencephalon? Medulla. Understandable till here? So here we add the image. See, The image forebrain, I told you about the nervous system classification, and out of that central nervous system, brain it has been categorized into three parts: forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon. Prosencephalon, which is forebrain, categorized into telencephalon and diencephalon. Midbrain is mesencephalon and hindbrain is rhombencephalon. Here you can see through the image forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain, and the various parts it includes. So now till here we got to know about the classification of the nervous system. And in nervous system, if we talk about nervous system, the major thing we need to know about cerebrospinal fluid. So friends, cerebrospinal fluid, we need to know it is a clear colorless fluid, colorless fluid, which runs in the brain and spinal cord. Okay. So from the embryological point of view, you must know the three things. First, we know from the germ layers. First one to develop was endoderm. The second one was mesoderm, or when we say the notochord has to get formed, then we say paraxial mesoderm or mesoblast. Mesoderm, endoderm, and third, from its proliferation, we say ectoderm. Now in ectoderm, we need to know the mnemonic PGT, which is PGT. P for plate, then groove, and then tube. This is the whole upper part is ectoderm. But ectoderm again has its terms. In the middle one we have neural plate ectoderm, this one and this one, both are surface ectoderm. And in between these two, we have our cells, which are called the neural crest cells. Then from here we need to understand how it happens. From here we need to know how the CSF. See, it is in the embryological process when the baby is getting developed in the womb. It is like in the dorsum. This whole process from zygote to being gastrulation, it's placed like a dorsum. Here it is your brain, and at the down it is your spinal cord. When the ectoderm is formed, PGT, I told you the mnemonic, plate, neural plate, then neural groove. The neural groove has to detach from this dorsum of the baby. The neural groove has to detach from the dorsum of the baby, and it forms, has to detach from the dorsum of the baby, and it forms the neural tube. This neural tube. And here in this neural tube, amniotic fluid is there. Which forms the first CSF in human being. Amniotic fluid forms the first cerebrospinal fluid. Again, ectoderm, neural plate ectoderm, neural groove, neural tube at the last will form. The neural groove has to get detached from during the embryological process. The neural groove has to get detached during the embryological process from the dorsal surface, dorsum of the baby, which is developing. And this is being, when it gets detached, it will become the round shaped cavity like. And here in this round shaped cavity, neural tube, this amniotic fluid is being filled. And this amniotic fluid forms the first CSF in the child. First CSF is being formed by amniotic fluid. Then after that, in the brain, I told you about the brain classification. 3 parts: prosencephalon, mesencephalon, rhombencephalon. So how this CSF, which is being formed first, then through the embryological process, then the various parts of the brain will develop. Just understand, don't go for the diagrams, just understand one thing. These are the lateral ventricles. These two are the lateral ventricles. Lateral ventricles. Here somewhere there is one foramen which is known as intraventricular foramen of Monro. Foramen of Monro. Once the amniotic fluid, first CSF is being formed by amniotic fluid. After that, when the lateral ventricles are formed, the capacity to form the CSF is being taken up by choroid plexus. So in the walls of these ventricles, in nearby walls of these ventricles, there are present one plexus. Plexus is a network which is known as choroid plexus. Choroid plexus. This choroid plexus, it is the derivative of epithelial cells, specifically the ependymal cells, which are present on the walls of these ventricles. And here it forms the CSF. The first CSF is formed by amniotic fluid. After that, the CSF is formed by choroid plexus, which is choroid plexus. Then we need to know from how choroid plexus it goes to the CSF starts to flow from the lateral ventricles. It goes through the intraventricular foramen of Monro. From intraventricular foramen of Monro, the CSF goes down to the aqueduct of Sylvius. Aqueduct of Sylvius. And from this aqueduct of Sylvius, it goes to the fourth ventricle. Here these both are lateral ventricles. Then from the intraventricular foramen of Monro, there is present third ventricle. This whole area, which I am making it black for you, this is third ventricle. Third ventricle. From third ventricle, it flows down through the aqueduct of Sylvius and goes to the fourth ventricle. This is fourth ventricle. Fourth ventricle. You will understand the anatomy, but you need to know about the various dissectional views, sagittal view, transverse view, and other views. You will understand it, no worries. And from the fourth ventricle, we have present two foramen. One median foramen, which is known as foramen of Magendie, and two lateral foramens, which are foramen of Lashka. And from there, it goes to the spinal canal, spinal cord. Spinal canal and spinal cord, and to the arachnoid granulations. Arachnoid granulations, or we can say it is being absorbed by the arachnoid granulations in subarachnoid space. subarachnoid space, in the subarachnoid space, and at the last goes to the dural venous sinuses. Dural venous sinuses. So again, about the classification of nervous system and the CSF. I told you the clear-cut points in the medicine, or to solve the MCQs about CSF: colorless, transparent fluid, formed by first CSF formed by amniotic fluid. Then rest of the CSF, once the lateral ventricles are formed by choroid plexus. Choroid plexus are the derivatives of ependymal cells, specifically the ependymal cells, but before it is the epithelial cells too. From the lateral ventricles, the CSF is flowing. The CSF from the lateral ventricle goes through which foramen? Foramen of Monro. Through the foramen of Monro, where it goes? To third ventricle. From third ventricle, it goes to the cerebral aqueduct, or we say aqueduct of Sylvius. Aqueduct of Sylvius, it goes to the fourth ventricle, and from the fourth ventricle we have, on the roof, we have two foramen. Median foramen, which is at the middle, foramen of Magendie. Two lateral foramen of Leshka. From there, this CSF which is coming down, it goes from there to the subarachnoid space, and it gets absorbed by the subarachnoid granulations, and it goes to the dural venous sinuses, and the CSF at the last goes to the venous system of our body. Where? Venous system of our body. From clinical point of view, if I say there is an obstruction in the aqueduct of Sylvius, or more medical term, we say there is aqueductal stenosis. Aqueductal stenosis. Stenosis means hardening due to deposition of anything. If there is aqueductal stenosis, we can understand from the diagram the CSF which is coming down will get accumulated. If there is a hardening, the flow will get obstructed. The CSF keep on accumulating. It is not coming down. Then these lateral ventricles and third ventricles will fill up with the CSF. If this is filled up with the CSF, we say the flattening effect. Which effect? Flattening effect. Or we can say forebrain will die. Forebrain will die. In other words, it leads to hydrocephalus. It leads to internal hydrocephalus. When CSF is being filled in the lateral ventricles or the third ventricle. Why? Because there is stenosis or obstruction in the aqueduct of Sylvius. It will keep on accumulating. There will be then another, every day 500 ml of CSF is being produced. 5 ml of CSF is being produced every day. So 0.4 ml per minute. Friend, these are the MCQ points, direct MCQ points we need to know. So one more thing, we say, I told you about the classification of the brain. This part of lateral ventricle, it is telencephalon. Where the third ventricle is located, this part is diencephalon. Where the aqueduct of Sylvius is located, it is midbrain or mesencephalon. And where the fourth ventricle is located, it is rhombencephalon. So my main aim to tell you the classification of the nervous system is to, because the examiner will ask you where the fourth ventricle is located, which part of the brain the fourth ventricle is located. Now from the diagram you can say the fourth ventricle is located in rhombencephalon. Third ventricle is located in which part of the forebrain? It is diencephalon. So in that manner we need to keep on revising and studying. Best of luck. Keep revising and studying. Medicine is all about concept. If you have the clear-cut concept, if you know the clear-cut pathway, like in this topic, lateral ventricles, foramen of Monro goes to third ventricle. third ventricle to cerebral aqueduct to fourth ventricle. From there we have two foramen, which is absorbing, which is from where the CSF is going down and getting absorbed in the subarachnoid space through the arachnoid granulations and goes to the venous system. Like this manner we need to study. Best of luck.